Hello, welcome to my video of the books I read this fall. So I kind of just dropped the ball with doing my September reading wrap up and my October reading wrap up. So I thought I would just do it all in one and just do a fall reading wrap up instead. In the month of September, I read 8 books, and in the month of October, I read 7. So that's 15 total in 2 months, which is pretty good. So I'm just gonna go from the top of September and work my way down till the end of October. So the first book that I read in September was The Unwinding of the Miracle, a memoir of life, death, and everything that comes after by Julie Yip Williams. I gave this book a 4 to 5. This is a nonfiction written by a woman who was dying of cancer. This book was released and published after she had passed away, and it was just the story of her life, but also I would describe it as kind of like a journal on her thoughts and feelings about death and grief and leaving your loved ones behind. So there were a lot of powerful messages. There was a lot of themes that made you like stop and think and kind of consider what you would do in her situation. So I don't know, it was really sad, really moving, really powerful. I recommend this book to anyone who likes nonfiction or just to anyone who is interested in those themes. I thought it was really good. After that, I'm not going to say that. I watched a video. I was editing a video one time. Literally, after every book, I said after that. I think it was my Goodreads summer reading challenge. Like literally every single time to introduce a new book, I go after that, after that. So that's my goal, is to not say that. And I already did it once. So moving on. The next book was another nonfiction called This Is Going to Hurt, Secret Diaries of a Junior Doctor. The author is Adam Kay. This is another, I think it's already nonfiction. And it's about a British man and his time becoming a doctor in the UK, which was really funny at some parts, really frustrating at others. Just, him sharing his frustrations with the system, that obviously you feel that and gets you frustrated as well, but a lot of funny things and even sad parts as well. I really, really liked it. I think it really gives a good look into what it's actually like being a doctor, a young doctor working your way up. And, the system in the UK is a lot different than the system in Canada, so it was interesting seeing those differences. And I gave that one a 4 out of 5. Again, I highly recommend it. I listened to the audiobook, and he voiced the audiobook, which was really enjoyable. Then I read Still Alice by Lisa Genova. I actually listened to the audiobook and I thought it was terrible. I gave this book a 2 out of 5. It's about a woman. This was so long ago, but it's about a woman who, she's a professor at, I believe, Harvard University. Her and her husband are both professors at the same university, and she is slowly, losing her mind to Alzheimer's, and she's quite young when she gets Alzheimer's. So it's a fiction book about her being diagnosed very young and going through that memory loss. I think it's a great idea. The book sounds really good, but it wasn't executed well. I didn't like her. I didn't like the main character. It was not oh my God, why can't I speak? It was not the book for me, but it's rated quite high on Goodreads, 4.3. So maybe you would like it if you tried. Next, I read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Of course, I gave this a 5 out of 5 because every Harry Potter book is going to get a 5 out of 5. I don't really need to explain The Prisoner of Azkaban. It's the third book in the series. Then came the book for book club. We chose The Nest for the month of September. I actually quite liked it, but the other 2 girls in my book club did not like it at all. I gave it a 4 to 5. This is a story. It's a family affair. There is 4 siblings. One brother gets into an accident, and the mom chooses to use the nest, which is their inheritance, to cover all of his bills. The other siblings aren't happy about it. The one brother says, I'll pay you back. So he's kind of like scheming how he can pay them back. and it's just about all their 4 different lives and how they intertwine with each other. And there are a lot of other different characters in New York. And I think that's one of the main reasons I liked the book as well, is it's set in New York, and I think the author did a really good job at laying out the scene and making me feel like I was in New York with the characters. We're still in September, so I read The Measure of My Powers, A Memoir of Food, Misery, and Paris by Jackie K. Ellis. Sorry, I didn't say the author for the previous book. The writer for The Nest was Cynthia Dupree Sweeney. Moving on to The Measure of My Powers by Jackie K. Ellis. She is a Canadian writer originally from Vancouver, and this is her memoir of her struggles with mental health and how she became a baker. So I really wanted to read this because part of it is set in Paris. She studied baking in Paris, and we went to Paris at the very beginning of October, so I wanted to kind of get in that Paris mood. Really liked this book, 4 to 5. I just love memoirs. I love reading people's stories, and hers was really good. It opens up talking about her marriage and her depression and going through that, and then her making the decision to go to Paris to learn how to bake and pursue that dream, and then her opening her new bakery and kind of just coming to terms with the mental illness and living with her depression and living a great life. Next was Year of Wonders by Geraldine Brooks. I listened to this as an audiobook. This is an historical fiction. This is based on a town. Oh my gosh, what century was it in? Let's see if I can find out. It's about a town that was, and this happened in real life, that was consumed by the plague, but they tried to contain it within the town, and the minister or priest, however you want to call him, convinced the townspeople to say, like, let's not infect our surrounding neighbors, like, let's try to contain it. And then a bunch of just crazy stuff happens when, let's see if I can find the year, when it was 1666 is the year. So a long time ago, people just had a lot of different thoughts and ways of coping with things. And, some people think that the devil has stuff to do with it. So they try to, they try to take things into their own hands and get rid of the devil or the witches or the illness with these crazy ways. Anyway, I thought the book was decent. I gave it a 3 to 5. Didn't love it, didn't hate it. I don't know if I necessarily recommend it unless you really like historical fiction, but I thought it was just good. The last book I read in September was A Stranger in the House by Sherry Lapina. I only gave it a 2 out of 5. This book is quite popular on YouTube and Goodreads. This is about a woman, the scene opens up. There's a dead man in an abandoned restaurant. A woman's in a car accident. She doesn't remember anything. Her husband goes to pick her up, and she gets memory loss for a certain period of time. But she remembers that before her memory loss, someone was coming in her house and screwing with her. And there's a whole history she has. There's a neighbor who's her best friend. Is she involved? We don't know. We're figuring out this whole dynamic between the husband and the wife, the neighbor, and the wife's past. I thought it was so boring. And I thought it was kind of obvious throughout the book, and I just did not like it at all. I don't think Sherry Lapina is my cup of tea. Another book of hers is coming up, and I didn't really care for that one either. So the first book of October was a Ruth Ware book. It was The Death of Mrs. Westaway. I gave that one a 3 to 5. I really love Ruth Ware. I've read almost all of her books now. I think I just haven't read her newest release. And The Death of Mrs. Westaway is basically about, an orphan. I mean, she's in her 20s now, but she was orphaned when she was at 16 or 17. Her mom passed away and she had no living family. So she gets a letter addressed to her saying that she gets this inheritance, and she's thinking, "Kill, I'm just gonna, like, I know this isn't for me. I know these people are my family, but I'm gonna like scheme my way in, and I'm gonna get the inheritance anyway. Like in and out, one and done. They won't even notice because they're so rich. Blah 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 blah." Of course, she arrives at this house. There's a mystery. She gets more involved with the family. It's super creepy, the book. Like, as Ruth Ware always does, she's really good at making creepy scenes. So I think if you're a Ruth Ware fan, you should definitely read it. I think if you're like a horror thriller fan, you should also read. Like, I would recommend it. It just was my favorite Ruth Ware that I've ever read. The second book of October was Watching You by Lisa Jewell. I love Lisa Jewell. I listened to this audiobook. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I think Lisa Jewell is so talented at writing a story. This one was a bit more suspenseful. Like in the first Lisa Jewell I had read, I can't remember the name right now. She laid it out from the beginning, like what had happened, but it was still so good just seeing the story progress. This one, there is a mystery. It was a whodunit, and there are so many different characters, and you're questioning the whole time, like, who was it? And I just really like her. I like her writing style, her characters, her ideas. So very good. Watching You. Then I read P.S. I Love You by Cecilia Ahern. I didn't even know this was a book. I thought it was just a movie. And then one of my girlfriends bought the book, so I borrowed it from her. And I gave the book a 3 out of 5. I love the movie. I think this is one of the few times where a movie is actually better than the book. The book it's good. It's long, and it's about, the 9 months that the main character is grieving her husband, and how she goes through that and tries to overcome it and tries to, come out the other side normal, or back to herself, or just a different version of herself that can live without her husband. So it was a really fun rom-com. I love the fact of like her getting the letters every month from her husband. Like, that's so fun, but I did prefer the movie. Then there was Love and Other Words by Christine Lauren. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. This is a romance. It is about, so we have our main character, so the girl and her best friend / high school sweetheart. So we first meet them when they're in their late 20s in the future, and it starts to go back and forth. We see how, they became best friends when they were young, and then how that developed into a relationship, and we see where they are now, and then how their relationship, crumbled apart in the past, like what was the big catalyst that broke them up, and why there was so much separation for so long. And it's a romance, like, will they get back together? Will they not get back together? And I love that kind of story, so I really enjoyed this one. Now is the next Sherry Lapina. It was The Couple Next Door. This one follows a man and a woman whose baby was stolen from their house when they were at a dinner party next door. It's like kind of like one of those townhouses that are connected. So they were at the one next door. While they were gone, the baby was stolen. Who stole the baby? We find out. Just not for me. I did give it a 3 out of 5, but I don't know. It's going to be forgettable for me for sure. And then there's 2 more books for October. There was Well Met by Jen DeLuca. I listened to the audiobook of this one. This is a very different type of romance book. It's about this woman who goes to take care of her sister and her niece because the sister had gotten some surgery, and she has to be in this Renaissance fair in this little town. There's another guy in the Renaissance fair, and of course it's about her, like, growing up and finding out what she wants in her life and making decisions and becoming an adult while this whole romance is going on at the same time. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Like, I actually didn't mind the whole Renaissance fair bit. I thought that was actually kind of fun and interesting, and it reminded me of Shakespeare in Love, which I love that movie. But I don't know, just the way the story progressed and the things these people did. Like, I can't stand when in a book, when you have, the main character and their love interest, and things go to hell just because they're not saying what they're actually feeling, or there's a miscommunication, or they feel like, you know, they're so insecure they don't want to say what they actually feel. Like, I just hate that because I don't relate to that. Like, it just like, it could prevent so many problems if they just said what they're actually thinking or feeling. And I don't know. Anyway, maybe you'd like it. You should just try it out, maybe. The last one for October for this fall was The Fairy Tale Detectives by Michael Buckley. This is a children's book, or not children's, like middle grade, like more towards like 11, 12-year-old. And it's a fun story. It's about the Grimm sisters, the sisters Grimm. Their parents have vanished and they have to go live with their grandma. And their grandma lives in a town in the US, but this town has all the immigrant fairy tale characters that left Europe and went to America back like during the time all the Europeans were coming over. It's just, if you like fairy tales and you like reading fairy tales in different ways or seeing the fairy tale characters in different stories, I highly recommend it, especially if you have kids. Like, this would be a really good one to read with your children. And, you know, I read it around Halloween, even though that's really a Halloween book, but it was good for the time of year. And I don't think I said I gave it a 4 out of 5. So yeah, that is it for all the books I read in fall. Thank you so much for watching the video. I will try very hard to get a November reading wrap-up come out at the right time, at the beginning of the month in December. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.